I'm so excited today to have Mariana Henninger on the podcast. Mariana is an Emmy-winning filmmaker and founder of brandmagnetic.com, where she helps online business owners accelerate trust and increase sales by creating instant connection with cold audiences using a single 3-minute brand video. Known as the queen of brand videos, she blends emotional storytelling with strategy to create a forever asset that makes you stand out and does the heavy lifting so you don't have to. She's also the host of the Empire Secrets of Digital Marketing podcast. Mariana, I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for being on the show.
Hey, William. Always a treat to chat with you.
I always enjoy our conversations, and this will be no exception.
I
I'm
know.
looking forward to
I'm
sharing
excited.
this one.
Yep.
Welcome to Catalytic Leadership, the podcast designed to help leaders intentionally grow and thrive. Here is your host, author, and leadership and executive coach, Dr. William Attaway.
I would love to start with you sharing a little bit of your story with our listeners, particularly around your journey in your development as a leader. How did you get started?
Oh, let's just address this question. Your development as a leader. That's so funny. I don't see myself as a leader, but William, like being in your world, I'm like, I think I should be more of a leader. Like
You are.
So thank you. Thank you for phrasing the question that way. And I appreciate that. My story is wild. So there's so many different things I could say about my story, and to try to condense what could be a bigger book into just a shorter answer for you. I got started as a journalist, as a photographer. I went from undergrad to living in Bedouin tents in the Middle East and pitching stories. I lived in a hostel for 18 months and pitched stories every single day to editors, hoping to get my photos, bought. And it really taught me how to pitch really fast, how to look at stories, how to, even having been trained as a journalist, that was kind of how I got started. And as I was doing more and more storytelling at the time through photography, I learned something very quickly, which is in order to tell the best story, I needed to make people feel so comfortable with me. I didn't have a whole lot of time, right? Sometimes, even if I'm fast forwarding probably 10, 15 years when I was working at NBC and I was flying all over the world, Afghanistan and Haiti and Finland and Ukraine and all over the world telling people stories. I didn't have unlimited budgets, right? So I needed to get people to trust me very quickly, to know that I was going to do their story justice, and to be able to look at their story and be able to pull out the most impactful parts of their story, so that, and my biggest goal, and this is why I love documentary filmmaking, which I ended up, graduating from photography into documentary filmmaking. The biggest reason I love documentaries is because they put you in the shoes of somebody whose life and whose story you wouldn't otherwise necessarily care about. And when you're able to do that, you're literally taking a stranger to this person, a stranger to that story, to that reality, and making them care, making them feel something at the end of watching. At the time, I worked on a lot of short pieces. And so getting people to trust me really fast, and then understanding how to tell their story in a way that really packed that punch, that emotional punch, and made people feel something, made people take action. Eventually leading to an Emmy, as you mentioned. I actually got nominated for a second one. So those are the two things that I really learned in 15 years of traveling the world, first as a photographer, then in video, and working for the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Time Magazine, and then finally NBC, before I realized I was a closeted entrepreneur and I needed to do my own thing.
I love that story. There is no such thing as a wasted experience in your life.
Oh my gosh, no, yeah.
Every bit of that has made you into the leader, the entrepreneur, the business owner that you are today, and helps you as you serve your clients. Like, you're building know, like, and trust, right? Just like anybody else in the marketing world, but you're accelerating the process. How do you do that?
Well, it all starts with any good marketing, right? So I'll just tell you really quick. I think I need to bridge why, like, from journalism to what I do
Yeah.
today, which is straight up digital marketing, and really understanding how, as you said, to accelerate trust, how to make you stand out, how to make people instantly feel connected to you so that you are not lost in the sea of sameness. If you're an
Yes.
agency owner, so you don't blend in with everyone else. I actually heard a quote from Hermosi on his podcast just the other day, and he said, building an agency the is the lowest barrier to entry. All you need is a cell phone and an internet connection. And I'm like, oh man. Truly, so so many people can call themselves
Yeah.
digital agencies, and might not have the credentials, might not have the experience, and definitely do, if they, if they're coming from scratch, they don't have what your listeners, I'm sure, have. And yet they're flooding the marketplace. They're creating more and more content. We know that AI is spitting out content like in so much volume right now.
Yeah.
And so how do, not only do we stand out, but we pierce through that noise and create that instant connection the moment that people, cold audiences, land on our website, land on our social page, and not forget us. Like that's the that's the goal here. We don't want to be forgotten, and we want to
Yeah.
create an instant connection so that every time we're showing up, every time that we appear in their inbox, if luckily we've been able to grab their email, or we're showing up on socials, if luckily they followed us, they're paying so much more attention. So I transitioned out of the journalism world into the marketing world because I'm obsessed with marketing. I'm obsessed with sales. I'm obsessed with, like, understanding how to get people to feel something so that they can take action faster on a thing that, hopefully will transform their lives. I'm actually very picky about clients that I work with. There has to be alignment of values. So I love promoting businesses who really and truly bring something incredible to their clients, right? So anyway, what was your question?
So, like, how
How
do
do we
you
do that, right?
accelerate that? Right.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Like,
Yeah.
know, like, and trust is a long lead typically. You've got to really work to build that trust factor, but you've figured out a way to shortcut that a little bit.
For sure. That's actually the number one myth that I love changing people's perspectives around, like business owners' perspectives around. We have just bought this complete myth that it takes 6 to 12 months of having to show up consistently, of having to put out all of that content, having to work so hard to nurture people from cold all the way to hopefully a potential client, and hopefully they don't unsubscribe in the interim.
Right.
Hopefully the algorithm doesn't turn on us and we don't show up anymore, right? We've just bought that this is the way to do business. We take somebody from cold, we hopefully try to grab their emails with something really, really catchy right at the top of the funnel, and then we hope that they stick around long enough over months and months and months in order to build that trust with them, what I call microdosing. We're microdosing little bits of ourselves, little bits of our brand, so that they eventually trust us to be the person that will bring that solution to them. And so that's what we believe. That is the pain point of the reality of marketing in the digital space that we've just accepted.
Yeah.
How do we accelerate that? Well, good old marketing starts with understanding your audience really deeply and starting with them first, right? And so what I use is what I call the 4 trust triggers. We need to understand how to hit these 4 trust triggers so that people can accelerate, so we can accelerate that trust the moment that people meet us online. So before I talk about the 4 trust triggers, I'm going to explain something that's going to sound so obvious when you hear it, but we really don't think about it. And that is, when people first meet us, meaning they first land on our socials or they first land on our website, typically it's going to be one of those 2, or they maybe even hear about us from somebody else. When that first connection happens, we're not typically there, right? It's our website speaking for us. It's our social speaking for us. We're typically not interacting with a very cold audience the moment they meet us. And what's happening is that cold person, they're not even a lead yet, right? But that cold person is, what are they doing, William? They heard about us. They went to check us out. They went to figure out what we're about, right? They're checking us out. Actually, what's his name? I have his book and I totally blanked on his name. There's an author that talks about how people are checking us out in the privacy of anonymity in their own time and space.
That's good.
And so this is what I call the instant trust window. There's a window of time. It might be like 30 seconds. It might be a minute if you're lucky, where people are actively looking at your stuff and wanting to know who you are. And what they're trying to answer is it worth it for me to pay attention to this person, to this brand, right? Or to this business?
Is it
And
worth it?
what do we have, William? What are we serving them with? We're giving them an About Me page that more often than not, we kind of wrote. It was a tortured writer About Me page, right? We write it in the third person. We write it. We wrote it 10 years ago when we started our business, or whenever we start our business, we're like, ugh, I guess I need an About Me page. Ugh, what am I going to write about myself? That doesn't sound too self-glorifying.
That sounds
and we
so true.
Never look at it again, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And
because we don't want to.
We don't want to, right? Who wants to talk about themselves? We have learned that it's all about our clients. It's all about them. It's all about, and listen, I'm not anti that messaging. And I think Donald Miller did an amazing job of shifting our perspective with the story brand concept into making it all about your customer. Your customers, yes, your customer is a hero. However, your customer, the hero, wants to know who you are. They want to know who you are because they want to know if they can trust you to solve the problem that you, with such amazing copy, you're saying that you're great at, and you're saying that you can solve for them. Ultimately, they want to make the decision about whether they want to work with you versus anybody else.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is we're not paying attention to that message that truly shows them who we are. And so that About Me page that we wrote and we forgot about is typically, and you know this, the stat, I think we talked about this when we first met, it is the second most visited page on any website. Or About Us, or Meet Our Team, whatever you want to call it. Why? Because people want to know, William. They want to know. And so, and then, on your socials, if you're lucky, you might be one of those people who realize it's important to like pin something at the top that kind of explains who you are. Some people don't, some businesses don't do that. And when you don't do that, here's what happens. Your cold audience person who might have been a perfect client for you next week, right? Yeah. Who might have been so ready to work with you. They are put into this funnel that we just assumed this is how digital marketing works. They need to come into our nurture sequence that is going to take 2 months or however long our nurture sequence is, because we're treating them so gently. We don't want to like oversell. We just want to like microdose it, give them a ton of value. That's right. But we don't want to talk about ourselves because God forbid, we make it about us. And truly, it's not that you need to make your marketing about you. You need to meet them in that instant trust window, that those 30 seconds, that 1 minute where they're actually out of their own free will trying to figure out who you are so that they understand whether to pay attention to you or not. We need to meet them with something impactful and something that's going to drive so much emotion that they can't ever forget who we are. And so what I've developed is, with my background in like beautiful, intimate, personal storytelling, I had a documentary that went on to play in Congress in enacted law. Like this is what what I'm so passionate about is like how to squeeze your essence into like 3 minutes so that your audience who would watch your brand video on your About Me page, pinned on your socials, maybe it's in your email signature, it's on your sales page, if they're landing cold on a low ticket offer that you have ads running to, they need to know immediately what you're about, what you stand for, and hit those trust triggers, which I'm going to talk about. So I wanted to just set the stage before I told you the how of what our myth is, right? We just believe this myth that it's going to take months to convert somebody, when in fact that is doing them a disservice. We are doing our best clients a disservice by delaying this process, by accepting that it's going to take months, when in fact, once they know who we are, all that needs to happen next is they need to make sure you're a fit. They need to make sure those trust triggers actually match them. And then they obviously need to know a bit more about your offer, make sure, a few other things are aligned, but we can accelerate that process so much by giving them this asset that makes them feel like they know us before they ever get on a sales call.
That's so good. And that is exactly a myth that I hear all the time.
Yeah.
It's got a long sales cycle. You got to deal with, you got to build this thing over time. Don't sell too early. Don't sell
Right.
too fast. Don't
Right.
present your offer. Don't lean like value, exactly like you
Yeah, you're like
said.
walking on eggshells. And truth be
Right.
told, there's a lot of truth to that. Like I'm not saying that you should push your offer very quickly. What I'm saying is that we hide behind providing value and showing up as the expert first and foremost, versus showing up as the human. And showing up
That's
as the
good.
human means this is what this is why I do this. This is why
Right.
I'm passionate about helping you, because this is, there's so many how long do we have? I can go into, right? But I do want to answer your question of like how, right? So I explained how this works, but how do we actually create that single brand story? Like I work in brand videos because obviously video makes you come more alive a lot more. There's a lot more impact in video than in text. We know that from science. Nothing against text. I love copy, but so the way that we do that is by hitting those 4 trust triggers. The first one is people need to feel that you get them. So it does start with your audience. It's honestly, your brand video is all about your audience. It's how to connect with your audience by using your story. So you get them on a very deep level.
That's
the second trust trigger that they need to feel in order to trust you faster, they need to feel that you care about them deeply, that it's not just about, flashing a Stripe screenshot and, oh my gosh, my 100K months, all that pro marketing stuff. It's not about that. They're not a number to you. They are human whose business you are passionate about helping and accelerating, right? And you're passionate because you truly, truly care about them. So that's trust trigger number 2. That has to come through in that video or that whatever you're doing to meet them at that trust window the second they connect with you. The third one is that's where the expertise comes in. So to me, expertise comes third, which is like you have got them. And it's expertise in the sense of you've done this a lot. You know what you're doing. You can provide relief for your clients that they're in the best of hands. So your expertise is not even about you. It's about giving them the sense of relief that they don't have to worry when they're working with you. And then the fourth trust trigger is that we vibe, right? Our personalities match. Like you can have all 3. You get me, you care about me, you're the expert, but I might not actually like you as a person, right? Or we might have different styles, and maybe that would mean it's not a match, right? And you're not everybody's person, and that's okay. And so learning how to work from your audience to understand what their fears are, their desires, all these things that, I'm sure your audience knows about because they do marketing. So understanding them deeply and then reverse engineering from that into your story to understand which story and which parts of your story are going to hit them where they need to be hit in the sense of hitting those trust triggers for them, for your ideal client.
I love this. I love the simplicity of this. I love the depth of this. This hits all manner of relational touch points as you're building a relationship. I mean, I think about this in other contexts. I think about this in my story.
Okay.
I'm thinking about like, okay, you care, right? Or and then you care, right? I get you. I understand you.
Yep.
The niche that I primarily work in is agency world, right? And the reason for that is because I'm a 3rd generation entrepreneur. My dad started a traditional ad agency back in the 70s and ran it for 40 plus years. I know that world. I know the language. I know what it's like from both sides.
Yeah.
And it gives me the ability to create a relationship with people because I know that.
I would even say, I would even go deeper, William. Knowing can also be so superficial, right? ChatGPT knows.
That's true. That's true.
You get them.
That's true.
You experience that with them. There's a level of empathy that comes from like feeling the same things they feel, having been through that. So
the pain, right?
Yeah.
The pain points as you go through that journey. I watched my dad struggle. I watched him think more hours is going to equal more effectiveness. And I watched what happens when you sacrifice your marriage
Yeah. Oh man.
on the altar of potential success with your business.
Oof.
I watched what happens when you don't make the turn when the industry changes.
Can I challenge you again? Not only did you watch it, you felt it, right?
Yes,
You
100%.
you experienced that within your own family, and
Yes.
I'm sure you watched it, but you also there was a lot of emotional journey there for you.
100%. And these were catalysts that help me
Mm.
now with my clients
Oh,
to
for
help
sure.
them avoid some of those ditches, to help them say, hey, you know what? Do you know where this road goes that you're on? Because I do.
Mm.
Let me throw up a few warning signs for you. They're going to help you avoid this ditch. Let me help you go farther than maybe you even think you're capable of
Mm.
and get there faster because you don't have to learn some of this stuff the hard way. That's a catalyst inside of me,
Yeah.
right? But what you're describing is like, how do you take that? How do you take that story? How do you take that and present that in such a way that people feel like you get them,
Yeah.
right? They feel
Mhm.
seen, they feel heard. You get it, you understand,
Right.
and you care enough to want to help me overcome it.
Right.
This is so powerful. And you do this in 3 minutes.
I know. So that is the challenge, right?
Right.
I keep forgetting there's somebody famous that it can be quoted. I don't know if it was Hemingway or I really can't remember who it was, who said, I wrote you a letter. If I had had more time, it would have been a paragraph. You know what? So it
Mm.
takes so much skill to make something shorter and more
Yeah,
impactful.
it does.
I tell the story sometimes of the documentary that I made that won the Emmy. My
Yeah.
first cut was 45 minutes and I was so proud of that cut. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I didn't even, at the time I didn't even know we were going to submit it or whatever. And my boss turned around and said, it needs to be 10 minutes. And I was like,
Ooh. Ooh.
the
Oh.
way that I describe it, William, like going back to the editing floor and being like, how, like, I'm going to cut out so much good stuff. I remember that it felt like I was like, my heart was bleeding on the office
Right.
floor. That was like the visual. I think in visuals a lot. And that was the
Oh.
one that like, this is how it felt so painful to go back and cut so much out. And who knows? I don't know if it would have won as a 40-minute doc. And yet as a 10-minute doc, it's like punch to the gut. And so
Yeah.
it takes a lot of knowing what to keep and what to leave out, knowing what to film. There's a lot of what I don't even call it B-roll. I call it emotional visuals because your visuals are a character in this piece. They're also pushing forward the emotions that you want to trigger in your audience. That's actually the most important question you want to ask is, what is the emotion that I want my audience to have after watching this?
That's really good.
And then to something that you said earlier, I have clients who now have a brand video installed, like I call it a system. You really install the system throughout your funnels, throughout your business. And they say things like, we skip the 4 or 5 emails back and forth now, and people are coming to the sales call. All they need to know is all they're asking about are like, what are the details of my offer? They don't need to be sold on me. They feel like they know me already. And these are people who, had previously not spent those months and months being nurtured by them. It was just feeling like they knew you as if, so the way that I describe it is it's as if they had had this intimate coffee chat with like a best friend. And that's the feeling that you want to have in your brand video, which is very different. I mean, in a way, the words brand video don't really do it justice in that there's all sorts of brand videos out there. And I feel like the biggest mistake that most folks make is that they're just like not deep enough in that storytelling, in those very intentional emotional visuals. And you need to be very intentional to be able to do that in 3.5 minutes, 4 minutes, and pack a punch.
And that's how I would describe it. I mean, watching yours, right? Watching yours that you did for you, I was struck by the richness and by the depth and by the impact. And that's really what it feels like. You feel the impact of the video as you're watching it, like, oh man, this is hitting so many different places internally. Wow, this is powerful. And that takes a very special skill set and really the hands of a surgeon to know where to cut. and I think that's what you bring, the expertise that you bring to your clients.
Thanks, William. I really appreciate it. And sometimes if I'm on a podcast, I'll do something really crazy, which is pause this for a quick second, come right back, but you can watch my brand video at
Oh, I love that.
brandmagnetic.com/Mariana.
Yeah.
But it helps to watch it. I think, first of all, again, thank you so much for sharing that, because it really makes my heart so happy when people express the results that I want to achieve with these brand videos. But in addition to that, it's just kind of like describing a movie, right? You can describe it in so many words. You could talk about how it impacted you, how you cried, how you were, all of it, how it changed your life. But watching it for yourself and actually feeling it is the biggest testament to how this works. And so I appreciate you saying that so much. And
well, we'll have a link to that in the show notes so people can go watch this and experience it, because that's really what it is. It is an experience. It's not just something that you watch while you're doing something else. I'm going to encourage the listeners to actually pay attention. Like, take 3 minutes and see what happens. So good.
Thank you.
Mariana, I want to talk about you for a minute. You are leading, and you are leading at a different level today than you were 3, 4, 5 years ago. And that same thing is going to be true 3, 4, 5 years from now. How do you stay on top of your game? How do you level up with new leadership skills that you are going to need to have in order not to be the lid or the cap on your business's growth for the years to come?
I hang around people like you, William. I'm not even joking. I think, I'm not, my business is on the younger side. I haven't been around for 10 years doing this business. I have 15 plus years of experience as a documentary filmmaker. I have fewer years as a business owner and a marketer. And, as with every business, you're typically wearing more hats than you would like in the beginning. I've kind of passed that level now, where I have, people in place that assist in all sorts of ways. But I think we chatted about this. I have been blessed with team members who for a good amount of their work kind of self-lead, where it's very collaborative. And I think it was really meeting you, and I'm not just saying this because I'm on your podcast, but meeting you brought to my attention that this is not a skill set that I can just wing. And I need to be a lot more intentional about growing. And we talked about this when you were on my podcast, where leading yourself is the most difficult task. Like, you were the most difficult person to lead. I think it's about being around people who are doing it right. It's a lot about, yes, reading the right books or doing the right trainings, but ultimately being around people who are doing it right and watching their example, experience, again, less watching and more like feeling, like getting the feeling from them of what it means. Like, what does that nuance look like to navigate difficult situations with your team and decisions for growth, wearing less of the implementer hat and more of the CEO hat. That's kind of the stage where I am right now. And so I have me on the podcast a year from now. I'll probably give you like 5 other places, but for now, I really enjoy your podcast. I really enjoy your work. So looking forward to hearing you at the Commitment Summit. And hopefully this is going to be played beforehand. I'm not sure, but
It will. Absolutely.
Okay. And so that's what I'm doing right now.
I love that you share that, and I'm humble that you would find it useful, the things that we're putting out. That's awesome. I love that you talk about the community. And I think this is something that a lot of entrepreneurs lack. They don't have a group of people that they are growing with, growing alongside, learning from, sharpening each other, challenging each other, growing and learning together. That is critical for long-term success. The entrepreneurial road can be incredibly lonely if you try to do it all by yourself, but we were never intended to do that.
Yeah.
Finding your people, your tribe, your community that then you can go forward with helps you to truly go farther and get there faster. I'm so glad you brought that up.
For sure. I'll add two things to that. One, and they're kind of interconnected. One thing that I was praying a lot about at the end of last year was exactly that. I felt like I had these sort of shallow, really nice, shallow relationships with folks in my industry, peers in different groups that I'm in, different masterminds. But I really, really missed having deeper connections and having like my go-to group of gals. And I was praying to God. I was like, God, I really want this. Like, I hear people, what you just described. I was like, that sounds so good. It feels like I don't really have that go-to pod that I can come to with to really mastermind together, right? And I think I had great other people that I could sort of high level conversations with, and God really fulfilled that dream. It was initially it was like 3 of us, and it wasn't very active. It was like a private Voxer group, and now we invited a couple key people, and now we're like 6 of us. And the way that I describe it is kind of like Sex in the City, where like we're just like joined at the hip, and it all sort of evolved over January. And this is going to sound very girly, but we talk about like stuff that happens to women over their 40s. We talk about motherhood. And then we talk about a lot about business.
Yeah.
And I
You talk
love
about life.
100%. That's what
All
it
of
is.
it.
Being
Yeah.
able to have that peer group where you're like really, there's no topic that's off the table has been a game changer. And then the second thing I'll say is that maybe this answers your question about leadership too, is that one shift that I've made since the beginning of my business. I would say like the first year in business, this was not the case for me. And then I really decided like, this is going to change, and it's going to change like today. And that is that God's my CEO. And I know that can sound like, if you don't have a relationship with God, that can be like, what the heck is she talking about? But really what I mean is that I'm not bothered by the ups and downs of my business. I'm not, I just told you before we hit record, I had this massive opportunity that was previously a yes, become a no. And I was just like, okay, that's all right. God's going to open some other doors over here. And just relying on God for that stability of spirit has been a game changer. And I truly believe that maybe that's what I'm bringing to the table, to my team as well, is just that everything is figure outable. Thank you, Marie Forleo. There's nothing there's no circumstance that's going to affect how I feel. And it doesn't, quite the opposite. I'm so passionate about my business. I'm so invested in my business. I'm invested in my clients. And I do a lot of work for my business. I'm constantly studying. I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly growing and implementing new systems, all of that good stuff. But the most important thing is like, I'm hoping, like, the way that I look at my business is that I'm helping bring to the surface who you are as a human. And as a human, you were created by God. And that's, I think there's like such an awesome connection there. So anyway, so that's another really awesome, like, important layer of my business.
I love that. I think you have found your people, your mastermind group, when you can bring all of yourself into it.
Yeah.
Not just the highlight reel, not just the front facing or client facing you, but all of you. And that's what you're describing. You're bringing all of you into this setting, including your faith. And far too many entrepreneurs who are people of faith feel like they have to segment or wall off that part of their lives and not bring that part of them into their business. And I think it's so much healthier to understand that you are one person. And to live a life of integrity means that you are living a life where everything integrates together, where everything touches, and you're not trying to wall off or separate one part of your life from the rest of it. That's healthy.
That's
so
awesome.
Kudos to you.
That's
really
like
good.
Encouraging to even do more of that.
I love that. You've mentioned, that you're a learner, you're a continual learner, you are learning all the time, you're watching, you're listening, you're reading. I'm always looking for the next good book. Is there a book that you would recommend that you've read that you think, oh man, this one made a big difference in my journey? I'd love to recommend this to the other leaders who are listening.
That's a great question. I do a lot of selective learning, William. And what that means is, so I'm looking at across my table, I have like 6 books on my table right now.
Good.
And I've literally read specific chapters of each book, which is not how I recommend reading every book. But I am intentional about not spending time. what is it called? Just-in-time learning, right? So
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
is the thing that I need to focus on right now?
Right.
And what are
Right.
the very specific resources that are going to get me to that next step in that
I love
thing that
that.
I need to evolve in?
Yeah.
I'm gonna give a shout out to you again because that book Trust that you recommended
Oh,
to me is
by Henry Cloud.
phenomenal.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and it's also the word that I want to be known for. And so
Mm.
everything that says trust, I'm like, I'm gonna read that. I'm gonna learn that. um, I think, just from a quick branding BTS of my business here, that in the beginning, I did a lot of my messaging around brand videos. And I think
Mm.
that was a lesson that I learned, that when people hear brand videos, they think, oh, it's content. Oh,
Mm.
that's nice.
Yeah.
That's a nice to have. And I think I'm hoping that after listening to our chat, folks can see that the video is just a tool that
Right.
you use to accelerate trust in that very specific moment when people are meeting you for the first time. Like all
That's
of
true.
the people who will become future best clients for you are going to at one point meet you for the first time, and it's accelerating trust at that point. And
Mm.
so anyway, so all of this to say that in the beginning, I used to talk so much more about brand videos, and now I talk all about trust. And I feel
Mm.
like that really, just owning that word is so important for me in my branding. And that's something that I encourage everyone to have the one word or the maximum like 2 words that they're known for. So that when
That's
people
really good.
think of that word, they think of you. Leadership, William, trust,
Mm.
Mariana,
Yeah.
it's important to have that. Like, what is the one thing that you bring that's different from everyone else?
So good. As always, every time we talk, I feel like we could go for another
Yeah,
hour.
right.
There's so much wisdom and insight you have brought into this conversation, so much expertise that you bring to this topic. And I'm so grateful to you for being willing to share that so generously today. Thank you.
Thanks, William.
I know people are going to want to stay connected to you and continue to learn more about you and Brand Magnetic. What is the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, for sure. So if you listen to this conversation and you're like, I don't think I'm doing a good enough job as soon as people meet me to really make that connection, really make people feel something and really become sticky. And if you're looking at your marketing and you're thinking, I think I can do better at this point of the funnel, then I've got a great resource that's a bit more practical than the conversation we had today. So really to dive into how to create a brand story that converts, you can grab that cheat sheet at brandmagnetic.com/cheat sheet. And I'm on socials, Brand Magnetic. Connect with me in all the places where you would find people. But that's a great
Love
cheat sheet to get you started on this process of like how to think about my story in a way that is going to really move the needle and connect with people the moment that they meet me.
So good and so generous again. Thank you for that.
My pleasure.